Who hasn't?
Yeah, I guess I've been in the friend zone a lot, right? Right. It's not always the worst place to be, but if you have different intentions and like anyone in who has their own business or anyone in
Yeah.
sales or marketing kind of never wants to be in the friend zone, right? The reason this came up, this topic, is because of a Harvard Business Review article that, I mean, it's been out for 10 or 12 years now. So probably a lot of people have read it. But it's where they sort of, the authors broke out every kind of product or service they say would fit into essentially one of these four categories. And we're going to go through them really quickly and then talk about the fourth one, because I think the fourth one is the business equivalent of being friend zoned.
Sounds good.
You're just sort of being kept on the back burner, kept warm in case anyone ever needs you, right? So I think
Mhm.
essentials are pretty straightforward. Although in business, especially in B2B, right, essentials can have a different meaning.
Mhm.
Essentials can have something can be essential for a lot of reasons beyond you want it or you need it for production, right? You may want it for tax purposes. You may want it as a risk hedge. You may want it for all kinds of reasons, right? And a lot of things fall into that category: equipment and buildings and loads of stuff. But treats was interesting because I can't imagine that you're in a treat business and not know that you're in a treat business, right? Unless you're sort of on the edge. Like Starbucks, you can consider a treat business. On
Mhm.
the one hand, it's just coffee. On the other hand, you can get, a million different things there, and a lot of them are basically desserts. I'm trying to think of another example. Do you think of another example of a company that knows it's in the treat business?
The cake shop down the road from me would be in the treat business.
Definitely, right?
We
They
got a lot of
understand
cake
you're not
shops
going to
around.
buy there every day,
Yeah. No, not every day.
right?
I don't know. Would you? I think you'd have to say even some sandwich businesses would be in the treats business. Would you
Uh,
not?
well, I'll tell you, they have torn down a Wendy's that's pretty close to my house, and they're
Okay.
replacing it with a Five Guys.
Yeah.
I would consider Five Guys. I don't consider Five Guys and McDonald's to be in the same market segment at all.
No, not at all.
McDonald's is sort of they aim for every day. That's why they serve, breakfast and everything else. And whereas Five Guys, it's like a much bigger burger. It's a meal for sure, right? You get 10,000 pounds of French fries when you order them,
Mhm.
and like that to me is a treat business. I don't know anybody who eats at Five Guys more than say once a week, and maybe only once or every few weeks.
Yeah, me too. If I go out for a burger, it's definitely a treat, and it might happen every couple months at max.
Yeah. Have you
Maybe
been to a
more.
Five Guys? Like, do you know what I'm talking about? I don't
Oh,
even know.
yeah.
I know they're based in Virginia, but I don't know like where you find
Yeah,
them up.
we got them all over the place here too.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, this just like it's a gigantic burger and a lot of food, and it's really rich. You couldn't possibly like eat that even twice a day. So treats business, great. I mean, and the pricing structure and the whole marketing structure would be different if you're in a treats business, right? You would expect to have higher margins because your repeat business is going to be lower,
Yeah.
and you can probably sell at a larger size, right? I mean, that goes back to the McDonald's versus Five Guys example, right? They're a treat business, so they can make a bigger burger, so you feel like you're buying a small luxury and treating yourself.
Sure, and I think of, Starbucks. I was just watching recently because my wife and I love the History Channel,
Right,
and, we are watching the coffee wars and donut wars the other
right,
day the other
yeah,
day, and the 2 newest episodes on that particular, episode of food, and the food it made America, and it's funny because at first, you got Dunkin' Donuts and some of these other companies that come in, and coffee is they're trying to find really unique coffee, but keep it at a very low price. And then in comes Starbucks
right.
that comes in at a very high price and a very unusual. People just really love their coffee, but they come in at a much higher price. So
Yeah. In fact, I think I didn't know it at the time, but I think I had, and in a way still have, a treat business.
okay.
It's not my main business, right? But I
Hmm.
have that service over on perfectlydescribed.com where I would do those flash LinkedIn summary sections or about sections for people, right? Where they come online on the Zoom call at the top of the hour and I walk them through these 8 or 9 questions and sort of push back on them. And We really try to get down to like the whys and the real whys of what they want to say to their next employer or marketplace, whatever. And then I would like write from scratch while they watched in the Google document their new LinkedIn about section, very like markety, very sort of like powerful and visceral kind of language, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, it was $300.
Mm.
And so that's kind of a treat business, right? If you're looking for a job, there are other ways to spend $300.
Yeah.
And yet, a lot of people bought that, right? It took up a lot of my time last year writing those things for people. And a lot of people got great results from it. They got new jobs, they got promotions, they got new customers. It was great. But I mean, it was clearly something that they could, sort of like splurge a little for themselves. So I didn't realize it at the time. Otherwise, I might have priced it differently or treated it differently, or at least positioned it differently as like a treat.
Mm.
You deserve this kind of thing. It's probably the number one message in any treat business is you deserve this, right?
It's your reward
Yeah.
of sorts.
So then you end up with optionals. And to me, I mean, other than essentials, where you land on the treats, optionals, and postponables kind of depends on your perspective, right? Every treat is technically optional, and everything that's optional is technically postponable. But to me, well, not to me, to the authors of the paper, it seems like optional is something that you will have to purchase at some point. And the only thing that's really optional about it, or the main thing that's optional, is the timing. So you have to buy it, but you don't have to buy it right now, right? You can put off your next car purchase. A lot of people are not buying cars right now and haven't for the past 6 or 9 months because the price has just gone out of whack with the semiconductor shortage.
Yeah, and
The
there's
car,
just
unless it like breaks apart, right? You can always put off buying your next car for at least a little while.
right. Unless you get in a car accident, then you
Unless you're in a car
won't
accident and
won't
then you
feel
have
quite
like
well.
an emergency. Yeah,
But it does create quite a yeah, it's funny, we were talking about this yesterday and the fact that you can't find good used cars because
right.
'cause they're not available or they're extremely high priced. You can't really get your hands on new cars because there's a shortage of new chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, I had to make a hard decision 2 weeks ago because my 15-year-old Accord, which we only ever drive, like, to my kid's school and back, it doesn't go anywhere.
Mm,
I don't even live in a city, I live in a town, so it's basically just the around town kind of car. It needed a new catalytic converter, and not only, has the price of catalytic converters roughly, doubled,
sure.
right, because of certain,
Unscrupulous behavior.
materials. Well, certain materials for sure that
Yeah, too.
commodity prices have gone crazy as well. But I mean,
Sure.
I wouldn't normally spend, I think the total including labor was something like $1,400.
Sure.
I wouldn't spend $1,400 on a 15-year-old base model Honda Accord.
No.
And yet I did because the first thing they did is the garage says, "Hey, before we talk about fixing your car and what it's going to cost, would you sell it to us?" And they offered me $6,500 for that car.
Huh?
Well, they could sell it. They knew they could turn it around for probably 8.
Sure.
So, I mean, it would have been like, a fast profit for them. And if it not for the fact that it was, so expensive to buy even a used car right now. And it's
Yes.
not that the cars, you have to have a car, you have to have a car, but you don't pay extra for the exact same thing you would have paid way less for last year if you don't need to. So I went ahead and made the repair.
Yeah, I ran into the same trouble last year myself. I wanted a car that was light enough to tow behind my RV,
Yeah.
and so I had to go search for a new car. Couldn't find one anywhere.
Yeah.
Ended up buying one from Carvana,
Yeah.
which was an interesting experience.
Right.
And, then you were paying, close to top dollar.
Yep.
But you would have done that anywhere, it was just hard to
Yeah.
find cars last year
Yeah.
and this year.
And for the most part, and this is true for almost every manufacturer of almost everything, the semiconductors, the chips that they use the exact same chip on every level of the product.
Yes.
It's just that features are turned off with software on each one. So if I'm, Honda or I'm GM, I'm putting those chips in my most expensive cars right now, where I'm
Mhm.
going to make the most money instead of putting them in the like econo cars and then sort of eating it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's optionals, something that you'll have to buy, but you have time to put it off. And then or actually optionals may be where like you really don't need it, but you might buy it anyway for like made up reasons. We all make up reasons for buying stuff. The really interesting one here, and it's certainly the most dangerous for your business if you don't realize that you're in this category. And you're in this category if your prospects or customers think you're in this category. You don't have control over that. Is the postponables, which is like they can indefinitely put off the purchase.
Hmm.
And if you're in a postponable business, if you sell something postponable, obviously you need to reframe it to get into one of the other categories, ideally the essentials categories, right? But you
Right.
definitely want to reframe it into something else. And so, I mean, how do you think we might reframe a postponable?
You'd want to find some, I think there's probably two ways to reframe it. You'd want to try to find a way to make it so that it's not as postponable as people think.
Right,
Or the other thing would be to build up your own kind of brand equity around it so that people see if they need that thing, they see you as the only place to get it.
right.
So those would
Yeah,
be two ways that I could think of.
yeah, I can think that if um, evoking any kind of scarcity
Yep.
work. Now, scarcity is tricky in B2B, right? Because technically there is no scarcity in B2B. It's almost impossible to argue scarcity in a B2B sale. They know that the prospects know that if you offer 10% off for this quarter and they wait 9 months and then come back and they say, I would like that 10% discount, you're going to give it to them or they're going to go to a competitor. So you don't have scarcity around that way. In fact, the only time I've ever figured out for a client how to do B2B scarcity is they were a small boutique kind of company and they could
Hmm.
really only handle about 10 projects a year. And so
Okay.
they would, starting in January, they would tell people up front, we are not going to just grow for the sake of growth and sacrifice or even risk quality. So we only do about 10 projects a year. That's a really good, sweet spot for us. You guys could be project number one. Once we get to 10, I mean, we simply will not have capacity to take care of you until next year or the year after. And they could legitimately say it, right? And it was
Yeah.
legitimately understandable. But other than that, I've never figured out a way to do B2B scarcity. It kind of doesn't exist.
I mean, I've got to think there's some scarcity around a company that sells a very unique product that very few other people sell, or maybe nobody sells, or have
That's
some.
awfully hard though, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the norm, but
Right.
it is available. I mean, we're always trying to think as a business owner, how do we make ourselves unique? Or
Yeah, but is there real does the prospect believe there's scarcity just because you make something that's unique, right? Or different or sort of
mm,
in its own category? They know you're going to keep producing it.
sure,
So if they wait 6 months, it will probably still exist. So, yeah, I've never been able to figure out how to help any client with B2B scarcity other than small specialty firms that
hmm,
literally just could not handle more than X amount of business per year and doesn't
okay,
want to grow, right, their head count or, or leverage anything in order to scale up.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So clearly, if you're in the postponable category, you need a way to reframe. Or, I put out a video. It was just like a little sort of slideshow video maybe 3 weeks ago. I think it was called 20 Lessons for Creatives. And one of the lessons it had in there was that in marketing, at least, in marketing, every one of your weaknesses is actually a strength if you can reframe it properly. So for that example I just gave, before there was like, oh, we're competing against these really big firms and construction type firms and stuff. And when our prospects compare us to them, it almost looks like we're risky because we're so small.
Hmm.
And so that was one of the things we did is we reframe it so that no, your smallness and your inability to scale up to the size of those guys is actually a strength.
Strength.
And you approach it that way.
Yep.
When I worked for a company once and they had corporate job, and they had a super restrictive non-compete and moonlighting language in their contract, the employment
Mhm.
contract. They said technically I couldn't have even mowed your lawn for $5 without getting approval from my manager.
Jeez.
Yeah. Now, granted, I mean they paid pretty well. So, but they kind of like owned every thought in my head.
Mm.
right? Until I left. And so when I was starting off the audience team business, where I was writing webinars and keynotes and stuff for those. I don't know why I always twirl my finger when I describe this business. For in my mind, I'm circling a map of the U.S. and Canada because all professional speaker clients were in the U.S. and Canada. So that's what that is. I apologize. Anyone was wondering why I'm like moving my hand. And to start off, I needed obviously some clients. Some folks approached me. I couldn't charge them anything because I didn't want to go to my company and tell them that I had a side business, and I didn't want to break my contract. And so so that was clearly a weakness, right, in my
Mm.
scenario. So I reframed it and I went to them and I said, look, like I'll even show you the paragraphs. These are the paragraphs in the employment contract I'm under right now. So I can't charge you for anything. It doesn't mean that I won't charge you in the future. When I'm ready to start charging you, I'm going to let you know.
Mhm.
But I'm not giving this away for free because it's not worth anything or I'm new. It's because I legally can't. But as
Right.
soon as I can, boy, are you going to pay?
Yeah.
And to them, that was a true story, completely
Mhm.
understandable. They're in
Sure.
business. They either has contracts, right? And say, all right, got it, no problem. And that way, I was by reframing it as a strength, I was able to get started and develop a reputation for it to the point where I'm still, ghostwriting webinars today,
Right.
not for free anymore.
No.
So I guess, I mean, other than reframing, I don't really know any way to get out of postponable. Of course, some things you're in a postponable category and then something external changes and suddenly you're required, right? I mean,
Mhm.
for most people, for most families, Zoom was absolutely a postponable until COVID hit.
Right.
So, right? Zoom had nothing to do with that. There wasn't any marketing brilliance on their side. So if the environment or something external changes, you might find yourself moved from postponable to essential even. But once that goes away, and we see this now, right? We see this with what's the name of the company, the exercise machine company with
Oh,
the screen, Peloton, like
Peloton.
completely crashed, right? People are going back to gyms
Yeah.
or else tired of the product or both. Zoom's having like similar stuff. It's not quite as bad, of course. Netflix is going down, stock prices,
Mhm.
pretty much wiped
Mhm.
out from the last several years of gains.
Sure.
And all because, something external changed and they were no longer a postponable, but now they became essential and now they get kicked back to postponable.
Yep.
But other than reframing, and if anyone has an idea, let's see, what's
Yeah, the other thing I was gonna say about postponables, and I think this is what happened to Peloton because, we kinda follow them a little bit. We loved their website when it first came out and the way they spoke to their consumers.
yeah,
But one thing that became obvious if you read their reviews, they were having a hard time delivering product,
yeah,
and that turned them into more of a postponable product because then people saw, "Geez, I really wanted that, but gosh, they can't deliver the product." They keep pushing people. People were saying, "Oh, they pushed us off 9 months for our bike, and they pushed us off again," and then,
right,
I think that really layered on.
yeah,
So, stuff, like you said, there's a lot of outside forces that can really change that postponable position
yeah,
positively or negatively.
yes. I mean, they got hit with
Mm,
positive and negative at the same time,
yep.
right? Greater
Sure.
demand and smaller and a shortage of parts.
Yep.
No, I'm not. The comment, no, no, I'm not going to mow anyone's lawn. Certainly not for 50 cents.
Well, we know who's saying that.
Yeah, I'm not going to fly to California to mow someone's
So
lawn.
take it with a grain of salt.
It's hard enough for my wife to get me to mow my lawn.
I know, right? No, I
So I'm
actually
gonna
like
hire
mowing
someone else for
lawns,
that
so
again. But I mean, the one takeaway from I think all of this is it's how the prospect or customers have framed you in their mind,
yeah.
and whether you can take your weakness if you're in one of the other categories beyond essential, how you can take that weakness and reframe it for them and turn it into a strength,
Mhm.
right? Because the whole point of being in marketing is you have infinite creative license to try to be something different and be something more valuable to somebody.
Yeah, and reframing is kind of a key to making changes, in a lot of different areas. Where there's a lot of things that we can reframe to make them, more essential, more treat oriented, more, just really reframing is such a key tool in so many things.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the chat. I don't know what an ovine is. Or do you know what an ovine is?
No.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there then. We'll follow up with Christopher Vogelman later.
That's right.
If hey, assuming you're still watching Dr. V, you should come on tomorrow since John can't make it. You and I
That's
can.
right.
All right, John. Thanks again.
You're welcome, Dean.
See you Thursday. Today's Wednesday. See you Friday.
Friday. Friday.
Have fun at
Yeah.
the dentist.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure at the dentist. All right.